Chapter 6 of How They Succeeded. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Wayne Cook. How They Succeeded by Orison Swett Marden. The Boyhood Experience of President Schurman of Cornell University. At 10 years of age, he was a country lad on a backwoods farm on Prince Edward Island. At 13, he had to become a clerk in a country store at a salary of $30 a year. At 18, he was a college student, supporting himself by working in the evenings as a bookkeeper. At 20, he had won a scholarship at the University of London in competition with all other Canadian students. At 25, he was a professor of philosophy at Acadia College, Nova Scotia. At 38, he was appointed president of Cornell University. At 44, he was chairman of President McKinley's Special Commission to the Philippines. In this summary is epitomized the career of Jacob Gould Schurman. It is a romance of real life such as is not unfamiliar in America. Mr. Schurman's career differs from that of some other self-made men, however. Instead of heaping up millions upon millions, he has applied his talents to winning the intellectual prizes of life, and has made his way unaided to the front rank of the leaders in thought and learning in this country. His career is a source of inspiration to all poor boys who have their own way to make in the world, for he has won his present honors by his own unaided efforts. President Schurman says of his early life, "It is impossible for the boy of today, no matter in what part of the country he is brought up, to appreciate the life of Prince Edward Island as it was 40 years ago. At that time it had neither railroads nor daily newspapers, nor any of the dozen other things that are the merest commonplaces nowadays, even to the boys of the country districts. I did not see a railroad until late in my teens. I was never inside a theater until after I was 20. The only newspaper that came to my father's house was a little provincial weekly. The only books the house contained were a few standard works such as the Bible, Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, Fox's Book of Martyrs, and a few others of that class. Remember, too, that this was not back in the beginning of the century, but little more than a generation ago, for I was born in the year 1854. My father had cleared away the land on which our house stood. He was a poor man, but no poorer than his neighbors. No amount of land, no amount of work could yield much more than the necessaries of life in that time and place. There were 8 children in our family, and there was work for all of us. A long tramp to school. Our parents were anxious to have their children acquire at least an elementary education, and so, summer and winter, we tramped the 1.5 miles that lay between our house and the district school. And the snow often fell to the depth of 5 or 6 feet on the island, and sometimes, when it was at its worst, our father would drive us all to school in a big sleigh. But no weather was bad enough to keep us away. That would be looked upon as a poor kind of school nowadays, I suppose. The scholars were of all ages, and everything, from ABC to the Rule of 3, were taught by the one teacher. But whatever may have been its deficiencies, the work of the school was thorough. The teacher was an old-fashioned drill master, and whatever he drove into our heads he put there to stay. I went to the school until I was 13, and by that time I had learned to read and write and spell and figure with considerable accuracy. The age of 13 I left home. I had formed no definite plans for the future. I merely wanted to get into a village and to earn some money. My father got me a place in the nearest town, Summerside, a village of about 1,000 inhabitants. For my first year's work, I was to receive $30 and my board. Think of that, young men of today. $30 a year for working from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. But I was glad to get the place. It was a start in the world, and the little village was like a city to my country eyes. He always supported himself. From the time I began working in the store until today, I have always supported myself. During all the years of my boyhood, I never received a penny that I did not earn myself. At the end of my first year, I went to a larger store in the same town, where I was to receive $60 a year and my board. I kept this place for 2 years, and then I gave it up, against the wishes of my employer, because I had made up my mind that I wanted to get a better education. I determined to go to college. I did not know how I was going to do this, except that it must be by my own efforts. I had saved about $80 from my storekeeping, and that was all the money I had in the world. Out of $150, the only cash he received in his first earnings during 3 years, young Schurman had saved $80. This he invested in the beginning of an education. When I told my employer of my plan, he tried to dissuade me from it. He pointed out the difficulties in the way of my going to college, and offered to double my pay if I would stay in the store. The turning point of his life. That was the turning point of my life. On one side was the certainty of $120 a year, and the prospect of promotion as fast as I deserved it. Remember what $120 meant in Prince Edward Island, and to a poor boy who had never possessed such a sum in his life. On the other side was my hope of obtaining an education. I knew that it involved hard work and self-denial, and there was the possibility of failure in the end. But my mind was made up. I would not turn back. I need not say that I do not regret that early decision, although I think that I should have made a successful storekeeper. With my $80 capital, I began to attend the village high school to get my preparation for college. I had only 1 year to do it in. My money would not last longer than that. I recited in Latin, Greek, and algebra, all on the same day, and for the next 40 weeks I studied harder than I ever had before or have since. At the end of the year, I entered the competitive examination for a scholarship in Prince of Wales College at Charlottetown on the island. I had small hope of winning it. My preparation had been so hasty and incomplete. But when the result was announced, I found I had not only won the scholarship from my county, but stood first in all the competitors on the island. The scholarship I had won amounted to only $60 a year. It seemed little enough, but I can say now, after nearly 30 years, that the winning of it was the greatest success I have ever had. I have had other rewards which, to most persons, would seem immeasurably greater, but with this difference, that first success was essential. Without it, I could not have gone on. The others I could have done without, if it had been necessary. For 2 years, young Schurman attended Prince of Wales College. He lived on his scholarship and what he could earn by keeping books for one of the town storekeepers, spending less than $100 during the entire college year. Afterwards, he taught a country school for a year and then went to Acadia College in Nova Scotia to complete his college course. A splendid college record. One of Mr. Schurman's fellow students in Acadia says that he was remarkable chiefly for taking every prize to which he was eligible. In his senior year, he learned of a scholarship in the University of London to be competed for by the students of Canadian colleges. The scholarship paid $500 a year for 3 years. The young student in Acadia was ambitious to continue his studies in England, and saw in this offer his opportunity. He tried the examination and won the prize. During the 3 years in the University of London, Mr. Schurman became deeply interested in the study of philosophy and decided that he had found in it his life work. He was eager to go to Germany and study under the great leaders of philosophic thought. A way was opened for him through the offer of the Hibbert Society in London, the prize being a traveling fellowship with $2,000 a year. The honor men of the great English universities like Oxford and Cambridge were among the competitors, but the poor country boy from Prince Edward Island was again successful, greatly to the surprise of the others. At the end of his course in Germany, Mr. Schurman, then a doctor of philosophy, returned to Acadia College to become a teacher there. Soon afterwards, he was called to Dalhousie University at Halifax, Nova Scotia. In 1886, when a chair of philosophy was established at Cornell, President White, who once met the brilliant young Canadian, called him to that position. 2 years later, Dr. Schurman became Dean of the Sage School of Philosophy at Cornell. And in 1892, when the president's chair became vacant, he was placed at the head of the great university. At that time, he was only 38 years of age. President Schurman is a man of great intellectual power and an inspiring presence. Though one of the youngest college presidents in the country, he is one of the most successful, and under his leadership, Cornell has been very prosperous. He is deeply interested in all the affairs of young men, and especially those who, as he did, must make their own way in the world. He said the other day, "Though I am no longer engaged directly in teaching, I should think my work a failure if I did not feel that my influence on the young men with whom I come in contact is as direct and helpful as that of a teacher could be." End of